All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Frank Speiser, CEO and co-founder of Metafide. And with me, I have Big Worm, Serge Satora, and Keyboard Yeti from our community moderators. And it's a pretty big day today. Today we had scheduled the look at the trending momentum behind Bitcoin and try to understand if we're in a breakout or if we're going to test the all-time high. And just like we scheduled it, BTC looks like it's about to test its all-time high today. So I think it's a pretty good time to be having this conversation. Serge, what did you wind up doing this weekend? Let's check in. How you doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty big weekend in the States. It's Memorial Day weekend for those of you not in the United States. So it's the unofficial start to the summer here. So some barbecues, and I did something called Memorial Day Murph, which is a pretty grueling workout we do in honor of the people who gave everything here in the United States. But yeah, besides that, just hung out with the family, and my pup just turned 12 years old today. So happy birthday,
Hey,
Coco.
happy birthday, Coco.
Yeah, she's listening right now. She's right behind me.
Yeah. One thing though, did you kip the pull-ups?
Did I kip the pull? Well, they were 100 pull-ups with a 20-pound weighted vest, so I kind of had to kip them a little bit.
Oh, Serge.
Yeah, so
All right, come on,
yeah,
Worm.
they
All
were
right,
cro-
all right.
they were CrossFit, and I had to do 200 push-ups after that, so I had to save my shoulders a little bit.
We get you. We get you, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for getting that in. Thanks for paying tribute to the men and women in America who went out there and put it on the line for us. So appreciate that, and hopefully everybody had a really great, safe weekend. Um, it's a great day here for the markets. Just to sort of recap, Bitcoin currently stands at 110,591, 596 on Coin Market Cap. Um, the ETF inflows are extremely positive. Actually, the largest major net inflow since April 29th, and maybe one of the biggest days of the year, happened just yesterday, which is a day off in most markets here in the United States. So that was largely from private positions, not mainly people on the on the institutional side putting that in. I think you had MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor's company, buying 4,000 plus BTC and essentially setting the stage up for a run. So, when you look at all those things and you look at where the price is at, and you start to understand again, like we keep telling everybody, there's only 3 to 5 million BTC trading at any one given time. When people are buying thousands at a block, there's not a whole lot out there to just go get. So I remember when I remember when the market panicked and it was around 77. We told everybody that we were buying on that day, and that seems like it's worked out pretty well for us and those of us who sort of shared that. What do you think's going on here, Serge? Anything out of the ordinary, or what do you
I don't.
think this? If you take a step back, what do you think it means?
I mean, I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary. I think you kind of nailed it in terms of there's limited supply out there. I think there's more, certainty in terms of, Bitcoin being sort of a safe haven or stable asset that is in sort of a lot of institutions' portfolios as well as retail investors. So if you think about that, and you think about these ETFs, and the underlying needs to be, backed by Bitcoin. Like if you think about some of these ETFs, I invested some ETFs a long time ago in terms of like leverage oil ETFs, and they were just backed by a bunch of like forward and derivative contracts, and you could just kind of create those. So it's like unlimited supply, but that's not the case with ETFs. Like you need to have, Bitcoin in the fund. So therefore, economics, supply and demand. You got a lot of demand, not a lot of supply, and your price is going to go up. I think the other thing that's happening is what's happening with the actually our special guest today. I think with the Genius Act, I mean there was a big bump for Bitcoin after that got announced like on the floor. So I hope to speak a little bit more on that today. So I think there's a little bit more clarity around what are those those guardrails, and what's the sort of framework look like for crypto going forward? So you put all those things together, you got a U.S. president that is very pro Bitcoin. Those are all factors for growth, in my opinion.
Yeah, good summary there, Serge. So before we get to our guest, I want to talk about essentially why Bitcoin. Like, what does it mean? Sometimes it's good to have a refresher. I know a lot of folks on this call already actually are bought in, but BTC represents a way for the common person to hedge against sort of inflationary banking policies, global political maneuvering, and stuff like that. And it lets you sort of hold a piece of the alternative. So it's not just a speculative asset in the sense that you hope it goes up. Like the concept is the more it's used in trade, the more it becomes an alternative to just either governments or quasi-governmental agencies turning around and saying, well, the value of the money you're trading in needs to be diluted so that we have more of it to inject credit into a system. It's a way for people to hedge against that and not be reliant. So if you're a common person and you work 2,000 hours a year, figure 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, and you save, say, 10% of that, you save 200 hours of your time over the course of the year. By the time the inflationary policies take 5% of that, that's 10 hours of your time that they take by the end of the year. And then you compound that, and after a few years, the purchasing power that you spent 200 of your hours to get is worth half that, right? And so when it compounds, and what BTC does is it says, well, it's not going to work on those inflationary metrics, and in effect is kind of a way for you to guard of your time being stolen. Because if you spend those 200 hours away from your family, away from your friends, away from your kids, away from your vacations, you sacrifice that for the intent to be able to make decisions with it later, essentially. So you'd have money or options to make decisions with later. If you don't have that option, then they stole it from you. Like that's the way that works. So you might not feel like it because no one's sticking a gun in your face and running down the street with your wallet, but it's just the same outcome, where you did something under one set of terms and then they were changed out from under you, and somebody walks down the street with what was your time. So you didn't get to see your kid walk the first time. You didn't get to see him learn to ride a bicycle. You didn't get to go out on that date with that special person that you had in mind because you were there working. You should own that. You should have the optionality to do that. And what this system is meant to do is meant to return that to you. And in cases where you're part of the growth, compound that for you so you get more of those decisions as early as possible. So just to sort of repeat the way I see the system, that's sort of what's going on there. And anything to add to that before I move to the next segment there?
Yeah,
Worm?
I remember there was a cool graphic I saw years ago, like where they show a visual of like a shopping cart, like what your dollars were worth, like whatever, 10, 15 years ago, and show all this food, like shopping cart was full. And then it's like what it's worth now. And it's like the shopping cart had like maybe 6 or 8 items in it. But then it's like, here's the value of like Bitcoin, blah, 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 and what you can put in the shopping cart now. And they were like a couple of MacBook Pros in there. There was like a Tesla Model X inside of there. So it just shows that, this whole purchasing power, it's silent. You can't see it because you think like you have more money, but then you go out there and you're like, wow, it's like these dollar bills I have can't get me as much as I thought. And it's all because of this, sort of centrally controlled, policy.
Yeah, and I'll just give one more example, right? So, like, if somebody went in to rob your community bank and your money and valuables were stored in there, and they ran in and they robbed half of it, like they got away with half the money in the bank, I think the community would say, "Oh, that's not right. That's not cool at all. Like that, you shouldn't do that." I think we could kind of all agree. But what we've seen since the creation of the Federal Reserve is robbing a bank a different way, where instead of robbing the money that's in the bank, imagine somebody pulls up to the bank and drops all the money in the bank on the front step of the bank, and just anybody can come grab it. And now the people in the bank, their purchasing power in the bank is sort of diluted out of existence with all those extra dollars that they dropped off in front of the bank. And some people might say, well, some people did better off. They wound up getting away with money, and that money is going to go in the system, and people are going to buy shoes and you know put braces on their kids with it. But at the same time, what you did was you took the hard work and good decision making and prudent planning of the people whose money is in the bank, and you transferred it to people who aren't as forward looking. And so you take the kind of time horizon that people have for the way they're planning their life out, and you transfer it to the people with a less responsible, shorter time horizon. And I'm not talking about people who are just barely getting by and have to sustain themselves. Like, of course, that in itself is an issue that needs to be dealt with. But when I'm talking about the people who manage to save a little or save some, you shouldn't then transfer the decisions and hard work that they did to people who could have made those decisions and just didn't because they're less inclined to plan for the future and improve the world around them, right? Like that's the kind of thing that you're up against. So it's kind of a big concept, and it's going on at a global level, and that's why having these alternative assets like BTC gives people sort of a lever to crank from, even if it's in the beginning it was against all odds, but now it's starting to become a little more mainstream, and I think we've sort of chosen to kind of be a part of that. And we sent Matt, who's not on the call with us. He is out in Las Vegas right now at BTC 2025, and he's planning with some of our partners on sort of some of the big things we're going to do next, and get that value into the system that we're building. Also, which leads me to my next point, we have a speaker from the South Carolina Emerging Tech Association. That's my home state here. And we've been working with them pretty closely on trying to shape the future of policy here and, inside the United States. I think we have with us is Dennis Fassuliotis. I hope I nailed that. I hope I nailed that pronunciation. So,
Oh man, that's
Dennis,
great.
Dennis, you want to fill us in on what's going on with S163 and what you're doing with the SCETA?
Yeah, sure. No, just to comment on a couple of things you said earlier, Frank. It's really. But first, let me thank you for inviting me to join you. Obviously,
Thanks for
we've been
joining
at
us.
this. Yeah, it really is exciting. I mean, having you part of the association has really catalyzed another area entirely. We've been at this now for 7 years, and it's been a long haul. But coming out of crypto winter, knowing what's going on the national front, international front, we're really well positioned now in South Carolina, to take advantage of all this. We've been like I always kind of liken it to the Greek image of Sisyphus. We have this massive boulder we've been pushing up the mountain, and every now and then we get a nice little break in it and rolls down the other side. So we feel like that's where we are right now. S163 is a bill. Can be referred to. We call it the Financial Freedom Act in South Carolina. Also could be didn't. Next one. Okay, I'm sorry. My phone was just telling me that there was a connection loss, but looks like I'm on.
We hear
But
you, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, just structuring really more of a laissez-faire guardrails around crypto, so that it fills some holes, in the event that we do have a problem or somebody does, do something wrong from that standpoint, without, a very, very heavy-handed level of regulation. I mean, the most extreme of that right now is New York State, where it's very heavily regulated. But they got started very early. So, South Carolina has always been a state that really prizes freedom, personal liberties, obviously. Our history goes way back to the founding of the country. Personally, I can tell you that, Bitcoin became a symbol of freedom for me. I mean, and a freedom from a financial system that, you know, after 30 years in business, it really kind of dawned on me that this system is rigged. I mean, it's not, you can work as hard as you like, but sometimes you just don't get ahead. So when I started looking around for another asset after I think it was my seventh recession, my background was, 1 to 4 family residential, bought a lot of houses over the years, and
Oh no, I think Dennis wound up his connection wound up failing him. So
He did give us a
while
warning.
he did give us a warning, so when he comes back, we'll get back into it. But yeah, the when you're back, Dennis, just give us a thumbs up, and we'll get you back in there. But you know what's going on down here is people are starting to realize there doesn't need to be a global financial center anymore, right? Where you can have decentralized cooperation and people could start setting up deals, and you don't sort of need to run everything through the lens of what's going to benefit a few folks at the expense of everyone, where we can sort of cut direct deals with each other. We don't need permission to deal with each other. So I think that's, you can feel it down here. And when Matt checks in from BTC 2025, I assume we're going to hear a lot of that as well, because this is the first one in the Trump era of the administration. The previous administration was somewhat hostile to, I wouldn't say somewhat, that's being charitable, was extremely hostile to cryptocurrency and anything alternative where that didn't consolidate control in the hands of a few folks trying to shape policy. You can have a government that shapes policy, but it shouldn't use the value of your money and your savings as a stick to the carrot that it supposedly could also offer. So I think the world is now 1 year in after the last BTC at 2024, and it feels like things are much different this time looking forward than the day before that event. Dennis, are you back with us? You're on mute if you're speaking.
Oh, if you can hear me, I'm back.
Yeah, welcome back,
Okay,
man.
excellent. Well, just to kind of wrap up on 163, just current status of it, so everybody knows, is that we have passed 163 in the Senate. It has moved over to the House. It's been assigned to the committee. So we're working diligently now. We have a split session, 2-year session. So our General Assembly is basically off right now, but although they do meet and continue to convene, so our focus really this time frame is to really push the education initiative across the board to get this bill passed, very early in session. So
what are the main components of that bill?
yeah, I mean, really, what we're doing in 163, we're basically providing basic definitions, for what blockchain is, what a node is, what is mining from that standpoint, what parameters, would require the South Carolina Attorney General to step in. Are there some zoning regulations in residential areas that would prevent, large scale mining? I mean, currently no. But once 163 is passed, yes. I mean, you can only have 3 servers on for a residential property. So, but if you're in an industrial area, and you comply with all the other zoning requirements, they can't say no, you can't mine here. So they won't. Obviously, the focus is to treat the industry, fairly. So, but
And
more
as
importantly,
I understand, sorry to cut you off there because I have some questions, but as I understand that bill too, it also impacts the concept of energy policy in the state and the region as well. Is that correct?
that's yeah. Well, obviously, because of the impact of it on energy and that Bitcoin mining has, it was the first thing that actually directed some of our lawmakers' attention to the fact that this industry was different because it does provide grid resiliency benefits. So, we've had a very, very strong ongoing debate. Actually, we just passed an energy bill in South Carolina, to make it easier for the generating companies to get permits. I mean, obviously in a capacity constraint state. So for that purpose, yeah, I mean, it really has, at least opened the eyes, to some of the lawmakers that something else is going on here. So, if you take it one step further, what it's done is it's brought attraction to the state. Also, there are really three qualities that South Carolina has, from an economic development standpoint. And one is obviously we have relatively low power rates, and we have a very strong workforce. But the urban areas have been primary beneficiaries of economic development in South Carolina. Focus has been primarily manufacturing, with vertical columns of industry of additive manufacturing, automotive, aerospace. I mean, nobody can deny the economic miracle of South Carolina, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what we see with S163 is that technology has always been seen as a vertical column of industry in South Carolina. What we're saying is, let's drop that vertical column 90 degrees. Let's set a basic platform of technology as the underlying, you know, innovation level. So as we move into, the conversion of Bitcoin and digital assets and artificial intelligence and trust mechanisms associated, with artificial intelligence, and that industry is impacting everything, just like digital capital is impacting everything. 80% of the world seems to get AI as a transformative, technology. Only 20% of the world seems to understand that digital capital is the engine that moves, and actually creates digital transformation, because otherwise, how do you pay for things? I mean, you can't do it with a dollar. So the characteristics of what Bitcoin is obviously currency native to the internet. The advent of artificial intelligence, and actually I wouldn't say the advent, but really the unveiling of artificial intelligence in its current scheme is just is really just life changing in so many areas. So, but how do you control that? I mean, and how do you know what a fake is? How do you? I mean, that's something everybody's going through right now. So, so here we have an opportunity now in South Carolina, to take the underlying work that we've done over the last 7 years. I mean, just to give everybody an idea, we were the first state in the country to propose as an association. We were the first association in the country to propose a stable coin for the state. That happened 9 years ago. We were told it was too much too early. Well, we're dusting off that proposal, and we're saying, okay, this is where you can be today. Had you followed this this strategy 9 years ago, we would be blazing ground as opposed to playing catch up. So we've got multiple bills in place right now. We were able to get S163 moving. We have another resolution, S225, which is a framework for artificial intelligence in the state, and really not being fearful of it, but saying, hey, this is an economic development opportunity. We could bring those developers that are working in their apartments in Brooklyn, and come on down and enjoy us on the beach. So the promise of what we have in South Carolina is really a substantial economy, that is just on the fringes right now of understanding what digital transformation is all about. And it's been applied within the structure of the industrial complex of South Carolina, but the broader understanding that this is really impactful is still left to a lot of people's imagination right now, and what that actually means. So we're really very encouraged. I mean, actually, we're getting ready to release a big report. Basically a legislative handbook that takes the 5 bills that we currently have in place right now. Looks to kind of plug the gaps with a couple of things that we need, and then ultimately, provide a roadmap for an incentive program in South Carolina, to attract knowledge-based companies, which are different from manufacturing. So, I mean, you don't need the large, land purchases and the big buildings, for a knowledge-based, startup from that standpoint. So, completely different from manufacturing. So, and South Carolina has never had an innovation program.
Well, yeah, thanks, Dennis. I appreciate you filling us in on some of that. That's a lot of big stuff, and we're really glad to be working with you on this. So thanks for joining us, and we'd love to have you back sometime soon. So, and again, just for everybody out there, we've been working closely with Dennis and his organization, South Carolina Emerging Tech Association, of which we're a member. Dennis and I have made trips to the Capitol together to help educate some some folks and fill in the gaps on what could be possible. And we're glad to be along for the ride and helping shape policy on that too. So with 5 minutes left, and it being a big market day and what we're doing, especially in the on the surge side, I wanted to get a couple questions from our community. Yeti, you want to hit us with a couple, one or two, and we'll see if we can get to them.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, cool. There's a few here, but I'll just start at the top. So we've got Mutars asking, how long do we have to wait now to get Surge into our hands now that we've announced the new chain?
That's a great question. I don't want to give away the marketing plan on the DojoS side, but you won't have to wait that long. We're gonna get it in the community's hands pretty early, and there'll be ways for you to start interacting with it sometime in the next few weeks. Here, you'll be able to start using components of it. I know Mutars is already. I think we're going to see him tomorrow,
he's in the
right?
alpha testing group, so he'll have it in his hands tomorrow for a short amount of time.
Yeah. What else you got? Can you hear me now?
He's there as a speaker. I just don't see him speaking.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Serge?
Oh, I can hear you just fine, Frank. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. There you go. All right, Yeti. Hit us with the next one, man.
Nice one. So we've got Ace asking if we'll see a ton integration in the future as people there enjoy games. So what's better than gamified trading?
Yeah, we're not against it. I think right now we have such a backlog of stuff for the communities we're supporting that we're going to get through those first. But we will likely, as long as there's not resistance from the ton ecosystem, we'll get to that fairly shortly. And I think also if we're going to drop alpha on this call, if I'm going to mention ton, we're probably also going to put in for the Binance Web3 wallet and support that integration at some point. But the gameplay will happen as long as it holds up and meets our standards. We're all going to do at the actual rights to the chain on DojoS.
Awesome. I'm loving the DojoS crowd.
They're awesome.
It's a good community.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, whoever generated the giraffe riding a Doge. I mentioned it, and 15 minutes later, the community provided. So I just want to say thanks for that.
Yeah, they're good at their memes.
What else you got, man? We got time for one more.
All right. So we've got Neil asking. Actually, I'll go to this. I'll go to Shriek's one. So Shrieks is saying the problem he has is that he was only able to buy a teeny tiny amount of Bitcoin when it was cheap, in inverted marks. Now it seems too expensive to him. Is it still worth DCAing into Bitcoin, or should he wait for a potential bear market to emerge?
So this is not financial advice, but I am in the position of buying, right? I'm not giving advice on what Shrieks should do, but I would say this. The chances, the reason why I'm still buying BTC is because I think BTC has a chance to get to a million in the next 5 years or so, right? Like I think that has a solid chance of getting there, right? What is the bear case? It drops 35-40% from where it is now. So if you're looking, is it not cheap now compared to where it might be, where I think it might get to? If I think Bitcoin can 10x from here, but it might drop 30%, like that's the thinking that stopped you from buying before, right? And just because it's not going to 100x or 1000x doesn't mean it's not cheap. Like the crypto Web3 mentality of this like gambling quick hit 100x nonsense. Just you got to stop leaving if you can get a 50% gain in an asset in 6 months, that's like you can't get that just every day on equities and other assets. Like if we still have that opportunity here in the space, so you shouldn't just give that to the institutions and the folks with discipline. Have discipline as a community yourself. do the things that we're doing if you want to do them, but we're telling people what we're doing. We're buying, and the people on our team are buying. So it's like the reason we're buying is because we believe in that future case. So if it could dip 35%, if BTC hit 70, it wouldn't be like everybody in crypto would run around like the sky is falling. But then when it hits 250, everybody's saying, "Oh, I should have got it." Except for some people who are mad that it didn't 100x. Like if you can get something to give you a 300% return on whatever you're doing in a foreseeable few year window, that's still cheap. So that's my case on that. So we're gonna have to leave it there. We're gonna come back.
Can I just jump in because I wanted to? I see a couple of Dojo S people in here. I just wanted to say, so we've got a spot for the alpha test tomorrow that I want to give away to someone who's in this space. So if you just come into the Discord, tag me or Roaming, and just say why you would like a spot in the space, I've got one to give out.
How do they get into the Discord there, Yeti?
How they get into the Discord? So follow our link tree, or it's discord.gg/FIDE, I think, or FIDE AI.
FIDE-token? Is that?
FIDE-token, that's the one.
That's discord.gg/FIDE-token. So we'll see everybody. We'll see everybody next at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, and we'll answer a whole bunch of questions, and we'll be following up on what happened on the alpha test tomorrow. And I want to thank our special guest, Dennis Fassuliotis from the South Carolina Emerging Tech Association, for joining us. So thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Thank you for having me. About to run down to the other 29,999 adherents to Bitcoin. You can imagine the vibe here. Bitcoin's at an all-time high. It is just amazing. So
good luck, man.
Yeah,
represent our state proudly. We'll catch up soon, and I can't wait.
Lots more coming. Thanks so much. Appreciate you having us. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.